I only have one other question.
What was that, Mr. Hunt?
Detective Furman, did you plant or manufacture any evidence in this case?
I assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
Matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty of the crime of murder.
And so here we go again, back with another one. Welcome to the Dark Times channel. And so as you all know, we lost a legend and a sports icon in O.J. Simpson. And not just a sports icon, but somewhat of a cultural icon. And when I say cultural icon, I don't mean by any doing of his own, because as we all know, O.J. wasn't black. He was O.J., according to his own words.
Well, I'm not black. I'm O.J.
He was a cultural icon because the media made him one.
I only have one other question.
What was that, Mr. Hunt?
Detective Furman, did you plant or manufacture any evidence in this case?
I assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
Today, you saw an unprecedented event. You saw a lead detective who is the person responsible for discovering the majority of the evidence in this case, refused to answer questions on the grounds that the answers that he may give would tend to incriminate him. It's unprecedented in the history of jurisprudence.
And so, like I said, O.J. Simpson was a cultural icon because the American people, the so-called black American people, got a chance to see the justice system work as it was designed to work. In a case like this, where you have the lead detective and Mark Furman, and he's on the stand and he's pleading the fifth to simple questions. Questions that any lead detective should be able to answer with a yes or no. Did you plant evidence? That should be a simple no. Did you manufacture evidence? That should be a simple no. And so a lot of people like to look and dissect this clip of Mark Furman pleading the fifth and suggest that O.J. Simpson got off because of a technicality. We're talking about something that should be considered criminal when you're talking about the LAPD and some of their practices. That's not a technicality. And a lot of the legal experts and people that actually looked at this trial through a non-biased lens, a lot of them say that O.J. should have never been brought up on charges. These charges should have never been brought against him based on the evidence.
Did O.J. Simpson get away with murder?
No, I looked at all the evidence they had and talked to the experts. They never should have brought the charge against him. And 4 of the chief detectives that were involved in that O.J. case wound up doing time in California for planting evidence. And as a matter of fact, if you saw the entire trial, there are several instances where evidence was planted and it's recorded on tape. The main reason the American public thinks she got away with something is because there was a sleaze known as Nancy Grace who's still around, and that was her first reporting thing. And she hyped that and put a lot of falsity out there, and the American public believed it because that was the only person they were hearing.
True.
I saw the entirety of the evidence. Nicole and Rod Goldman got their throats slit from ear to ear, their tongues pulled out of the slit with a pair of pliers. The fatal injury was a stab by a left-handed person. O.J. was right-handed.
What the?
It went in and it did that damage. There were no peripheral strikes. The footprints in the blood showed that somebody with a size 9 shoe, 9.5 shoe, and somebody with a size 9 and somebody with a 10.5 were there on the scene and did it. One of my late brothers actually was the expert the state was going to call until he refuted it. The glove man I know personally, his name is Richard Zuckerwar. He took a tracing of everybody's hand. It was a size large glove that fit Furman. And O.J. had a 2XL, which was way too big. Johnny Cochran knew that. So if it does not fit, you must acquit. And you can see Furman actually plant the bloody socks on a video that the jury saw that Nancy Grace refused to talk about. The DNA evidence that condemned them, she said, If you saw what went on, and I recorded all of it and looked at it, the experts said this doesn't exclude 96,000 people in the LA area.
And so that was Judge Joe Brown discussing some of the details of the O.J. Simpson case with Jesse Lee Peterson, of all people. And a lot of those different details and aspects of the O.J. Simpson case and trial, I had never heard, and a lot of us had never heard, because the mainstream media never talked about it. And not only did they not talk about it, like Judge Joe Brown said, a lot of people made their careers off of this case. People like Nancy Grace. Every time she was on television, she was pushing the same narrative. She was pushing the same narrative that OJ had to do it. She never presented any facts that was coming from the defense side. Her whole narrative was that OJ did it and case closed, and that somehow he was this criminal that slipped through the cracks and slipped through their grips.
However, there's not a video, $1 million video in the works, but it is coming up very shortly.
Your comments on the video?
Well, I believe counsel said it pretty succinctly. I think it's a shameless effort to profit off of a double homicide. I have compared it often to blood money. Now, the producer of that video is not happy with me saying that, but that's what it appears to be to me. And if the American public wants to buy it, I'm just very embarrassed for them.
This criminal defense attorney, civil rights attorney, outspoken supporter of the Simpson family during the trial, blood money?
I don't think it's blood money. There's two good reasons why O.J. Simpson's out there doing a video. It's called Sidney and Justin. He has a right to earn a living. And my colleague, the prosecutor from Georgia, I like her interpretation of Marsha Clark taking $4.2 million worth of blood money on her participation as a public servant. So I disagree with that. I disagree with the concept that O.J. Simpson has a right. He has a right to earn a living. He has a right to support his family. And he is not required to answer questions based on what other people want him to say. He has a right to present his own forum.
Jeanette Harris, what do you think now? With what you know now, as opposed to what you knew then, do you think it's possible he was involved, Mr. Simpson?
I have no idea. And, you know, when I was a juror on the trial, he wasn't on trial for being involved or being aware or knowing. He was on trial for did he murder those two people. And like I said before, the prosecution did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did it.
And so, like I said, OJ was a cultural icon, not by any of his own doing, but by mainstream media and people within mainstream media choosing to ignore the facts and making this case out to be a lot more polarizing than it otherwise should have been. Anytime you have a lead detective, the lead detective on the case pleading the fifth to planting evidence and tampering with evidence, riding around with blood in his trunk. Anytime you have circumstances like that, it should be an open and shut case. The individual that's on trial should not be found guilty. And it comes down to this. A lot of people were willing to overlook that. And a lot of people were willing to deny an individual justice if it meant sending O.J. Simpson to prison. And so, like I said previously, you don't have to love O.J. to celebrate what his legacy meant, not just on the football field, but later on in life, in particular with this trial. You don't have to celebrate the man because we don't know the man. But you can celebrate what he meant. You can celebrate what he meant to Black America. And that's what we're doing. So RIP to OJ, free OJ all day. The juice is loose. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, and make sure you guys go ahead and drop a comment in the comment section. And if you haven't given the video a thumbs up, make sure you go ahead and do that as well. And as usual, peace, chaos.